Call this council and committee meeting to order. Before we proceed to the roll call, I want to acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, the Mississaugas of the New Credit, and the Anishinaabe people, many of whom continue to reside in Fort Erie. Madam Clerk, the roll call.
All members of council are present, Your Worship.
Thank you. There are no announcements this evening. We've got quite a few items on the agenda. There is one addendum, and that is a modification to report CAO 03-2020, and that was circulated, I believe, to members of council. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest this evening? Councillor McDermott?
Yes, Your Worship. From the closed session meetings of December 16th and 19th with regards to the YMCA, I declare a conflict as my son works for YMCA Niagara.
Thank you. Any other declarations of pecuniary interest? There being none, we're giving notice this evening of upcoming public meetings relative to the budget meeting schedule. We have a meeting next Wednesday, January the 22nd, 2020, where we'll consider the general levy operating budget and assessment analysis, as well as the library budget. On Wednesday, January the 29th, 2020, we'll have a further budget meeting if necessary. Otherwise, the budget bylaws will be passed or will be considered by this council on Monday, January the 20th, water and wastewater budget and rates. On February 10th, 2020, the general levy budget and general capital budget. And March 16th, if there's any further bylaws that need to be passed. All those meetings take place here in the Town Hall Council chambers, and they start at 6 p.m. We have a couple of public meetings this evening, and the first is an official plan amendment and property rezoning. I will ask Matt Kernahan of the staff to provide council with some background. Then I will ask, is someone from the region want to speak tonight or no? Mr. Kernahan? Okay, and then if there's anyone who wishes to address council, either opposed to the application or to support the application, we'll call for them. And before you start, Mr. Kernahan, I want to note that this is your last public appearance on behalf of the town of Fort Erie. I know that you've had some interesting years in the employ of the town, and I must say that I've appreciated your work, and I'm sure that I speak on behalf of all members of council who had an opportunity to see the work that you've done and have heard from you and received advice on many, many important issues in the municipality. So it's with mixed feelings that we say goodbye to you at the end of this week, but we wish you well in your new employment in the private sector. So their gain is our loss, but thank you for all the years of very valuable service to the community. You're welcome.
By Pam Salvatore on behalf of the Regional Municipality of Niagara, who are the owners of the former water tower site located at 745 Crescent Road. To provide council with a refresher with the background on this application, the water tower that was formerly located on site was recently decommissioned. The region plans on declaring the property as surplus to their needs and marketing it for sale. The region made an application in the fall of 2009 to change the official plan and zoning of the site to make it more marketable. The purpose of their application is to redesignate the tower site from institutional to urban residential and to rezone the property from public to residential multiple one zone. The application would have permitted a variety of residential dwelling types to be developed on the site, including single detached dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, street townhouse dwellings, and block townhouse dwellings. The first public meeting on the application was held on November 17th, 2019. Staff then brought a report forward recommending approval of the combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment to permit the development of the site for the dwelling types I just mentioned on December 2nd, 2019. There was some discussion regarding the need for and the suitability of the site for low-rise apartment buildings at this location, and council passed the following resolution at the December 2nd, 2019 meeting. That Council approves the amendments to the town's official plan and zoning bylaw 129-90 for the lands owned by the Region of Niagara located at 745 Crescent Road as included in Appendix 3 and Appendix 5 of Report PDS 71-2019 respectively, including a 3-story apartment building that will contain up to 18 units for affordable housing, and further, that Council authorizes staff to prepare the necessary bylaws following a second public meeting being held with respect to the changes in the zoning of this parcel of land, and that notice be given to property owners within 800 feet of the site, and that carried. Purpose of this public meeting is to address the requirement in the second recommendation to hold a second public meeting to gain public input on the proposed zoning, including the provision to permit a 3-story apartment building with up to 18 units. Residents living within 240 meters or 800 feet of the site were sent notice of this public meeting on December 19th, 2019, and a notice was placed in the Fort Erie Post on the same date. This is an aerial photograph of the subject property as well as the surrounding neighborhood area. Subject property is located on the west side of Crescent Road, north of Phillips Street in the Crescent Park neighborhood. Following summarizes the land use surrounding the subject property. To the north are single detached dwellings and vacant residential lands. To the south are vacant residential lands. To the east is Crescent Road and single detached dwellings. To the west is Fairview Road, which is unopened at this particular place, and vacant residential lands. This slide shows the survey plan of the property. Subject property is a rectangular parcel, which is a through lot, meaning it has frontage on 2 streets. The lot has approximately 36 meters of frontage on Crescent Road and a portion of Fairview Road, which is not currently opened. The site is approximately 2,700 square meters, or 2/3 of an acre in area. The town developed a number of development concepts for the subject property to demonstrate how the site might be developed in the future, given the proposed zoning. All of these development concepts adhere to the setbacks, lot size, and building coverage permissions of the proposed RM1 zone. This first concept shows the site developed for 6 single detached dwellings, each with approximately 40 feet of frontage. This concept would require the developer to extend the road and municipal services northward across the Fairview Street frontage of the property. The second concept is for 4 duplex dwellings for a total of 8 units. This concept meets the RM1 requirements and would also require the extension of the roadway and services up Fairview Street. This concept shows the site developed for 8 street townhouse dwellings that meet the RM1 requirements for lot dimensions. As before, the Fairview Street and municipal services would be required to be extended at the cost of the developer to implement this concept. This last concept shows the site developed as a 3-story, 18-unit apartment building. Building coverage, setbacks, and parking layout all meet the town's standard zoning regulations for apartments, but the zoning for this concept would be limited in height to 3 stories. This concept, as well as the 3 previously shown, could be built in accordance with the motion passed at the December 2nd Council and Committee meeting. Since circulating the notice of public meeting to residents within 240 meters of the site, staff has received email comments from 3 residents. Ordinarily, these comments would be included in a staff report. However, one was not prepared in support of the meeting this evening, so I will summarize them briefly. 2 residents were opposed to any amendment that permitted any type of housing that was not single detached. These same residents were also opposed to affordable housing at this location. 1 other resident was fully supportive of the addition of the apartment building at this location, including a height of up to 6 stories. This resident was also supportive of affordable housing. The resident cited a concern with potential lead contamination of the property. However, staff notes that the region has undertaken an environmental site assessment and completed a record of site condition, and lead contamination was not cited as an issue. The resident also suggested a number of design considerations that could be incorporated at the site plan stage once the site is actively being developed. Town's official plan currently designates the property as institutional. Properties designated institutional are intended to be used for public uses and operations carried out by government agencies. As I mentioned, the region has decommissioned the water tower and no longer requires the site for utility purposes. Instead, they plan to market the site for sale. Based on the site's location on a local road within a residential neighborhood, it was determined that the use of the site for residential purposes is most appropriate. The region therefore requested the official plan designation of the property be changed from institutional to urban residential. Section 4.7.4 of the official plan states that lands within the urban residential designation are intended for a variety of housing forms, including single detached duplexes, semi-detached, townhouse, multiple unit dwellings, and apartments. Subject property is currently zoned public. The public zone permits only public uses and operations carried out on behalf of the government. The region of Niagara has applied to rezone the property to a residential multiple one zone. The RM1 zone permits a variety of residential uses, including singles, semis, duplex, triplex, fourplex, and townhouse dwellings. Subsequently, council passed a resolution directing staff to include the provision for the zoning to permit an apartment building with a maximum height of 3 stories and a maximum of 18 units, which could be used for affordable housing. The zoning bylaw for the site, which is planned to be brought forward on January 20th, will change the zoning of the site to a site-specific RM1 zone that will apply all of the regulations of the RM1 zone, except that in addition to the uses already permitted, an apartment building with a maximum height of 3 stories and a maximum of 18 units will also be permitted. The tenure of the building will not be addressed in the zoning bylaw, and that will be up to the purchaser. This slide shows natural heritage features in the vicinity of the subject property. As you can see, none are located on or in the immediate vicinity. This is a picture of the subject property back in November, looking west from Crescent Road. This is a picture looking east from Fairview Road. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kernahan. Do any members of council have questions? Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to Mr. Kernahan. I have just a few questions. If we could go to slide 4, if you don't mind. Yes. The zeros mean that that's owned by the town of Fort Erie, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, the zeros indicate vacant property.
Vacant
Property which hasn't been assigned an address as of yet.
Okay, and so who owns that property adjacent to that?
My understanding, it's not the town of Fort Erie, and it's not the regional municipality of Niagara. It's private ownership.
Okay, and then on slide 9, there was a sketch. So if I understand this correctly, the entrance will be off of Fairview Road into the parking lot, and then the building will be facing Crescent Road, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, this one of the benefits of the apartment concept at this location is that it permits quite a number of units to be developed without the necessity to open Fairview Road.
Okay.
Both the accesses, this concept shows 2 one-way accesses from Crescent Road.
Okay. All right, that's all I had for you. Thank you.
Any other councillors? Councillor Zanko.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you to Mr. Kernahan. Just a quick question to confirm some understandings that are in the area. I've received some calls with regard to residents thinking that that perhaps the region is going to continue to own this property and build subsidized apartment buildings. And I just wanted to clarify that, in fact, this is a zoning change and the property will be sold to a developer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the intent of this zoning change is to maximize what the region can get in return for the sale of this property. The regional housing indicated very clearly through the circulation of this application that they didn't have any intent of developing this site for affordable housing.
Thank you.
So I think at this point I should mention that I've had discussion with the chair of regional housing, excuse me, and I plan to raise the possibility of regional housing getting involved in doing some type of construction there. And I'm going to raise that at a couple of meetings. So for anybody here who's wanting to speak to council, I want to put that out on the table because it may be sold, it may not be sold. It seems to me that this is a great opportunity for some affordable housing, and that's at least on my radar.
Okay, I appreciate that's the first I've been made aware of it.
Yeah, I just had the conversation at the end of last week. Any other members of council have any questions of Mr. Kernahan? If not, then did you say that members of the region wanted to address council?
Yes, Diana Morreale is here. She can.
Good evening.
Evening. Through you, Mr. Mayor and Council of Fort Erie, thank you for the opportunity to speak. Just wanted to thank Town of Fort Erie staff for all their help with our rezoning application, as well as Town Council's support of the rezoning request. If you have any questions, we're more than willing to answer.
Okay, any members of council have any questions? Councillor Lubberts.
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I'm just listening to what the mayor has said just a little while ago. Have you been informed at all by anybody at the region that there might be some discussion about affordable housing?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I knew that there were discussions and requests for the last public meeting, but what Mr. Mayor Redekop had just mentioned is news to me. I think what the zoning request in front of you today could still be endorsed, and those discussions could still be had with regional housing.
Yeah, thank you very much. And what kind of timeline would there be for the mayor's discussion until you would be involved?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, sorry, it's usually through the chair, but where I'm at Regional Council. We would not personally be involved. What the planning department's role is to make sure that we are making sure we have the right land uses on this property. What we do is we do work with regional housing to make sure that we do have those land uses, and we could talk to them about the opportunities of perhaps incorporating affordable housing. This is on the radar. I do know when the region declared its surplus, it was offered to regional housing, and at that time, probably based on their budgets, they didn't have an opportunity for this site. However, things do change, so if there are discussions had, there might be an opportunity to look at the site again.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Any other members of council? Thank you very much, Ms. Morreale.
Thank you.
So at this point, if there's anyone who wishes to speak in support of the proposed amendment in the zoning and official plan for this property, you may please come forward. Then I'll go to anyone who wishes to speak in opposition. Please come forward, ma'am. Yeah, the back row. Good evening, and could we have your name and address for the record, please?
Certainly. My name is Sarah Towner. I live at 746 Crescent Road, directly across where the water tower was. I'm a little concerned about the idea of having apartment buildings there due to, first of all, the traffic that's going to be coming. If there's going to be 18 apartment buildings, that means there's 18 cars coming towards my house. Does not impress me. I'm also concerned with slide number 9, as you showed with the parking out back. That's going to be an awful lot of cars, a lot of noise for Crescent Road. Plus, you've got to remember that on Phillip Street, that we have the stop sign there. You have cars coming out, then there's a stop sign. It's going to be congestion there. I propose that we still keep the idea of these single-dwelling homes. I think that's a great idea, keeping with the look of Crescent Park as being a nice home-style subdivision. Marina, I think it's lovely you think Crescent Park is a great place for apartment buildings, but maybe you should look at Ridgeway or in the north end of Fort Erie for apartment buildings. Rio Vista, that's gone. We can put an apartment building in there, 3 stories, 18 units. I don't understand why you want to put an apartment building in the middle of a subdivision like Crescent Park, which is old and established. Maybe out on Nye Road, maybe out on Rose Hill Road would be another option, but I just don't think that putting it smack dab in the middle of a subdivision is a good idea. We have a lot of nice, new, beautiful homes, and I just don't think it would be a good fit to have a 3-story apartment building. Again, my vote is for just having the single-dwelling homes, maybe a duplex, maybe, but limited with how many we can have there because of the traffic and everything on Crescent Road. And that's it.
Thank you very much, Ms. Towner.
Thank
Before
you.
Go,
Yes.
any members of council have any questions of Ms. Towner?
Yes, Marina.
Hi, Sarah.
Hi, how are you?
Your Worship. I'm good, thanks.
Good.
How are you?
Fine.
Good. I really appreciate all the comments that you've made. I just have a quick question for you. When the new subdivisions were built off of Crescent Road, did you notice a substantial increase in traffic?
They weren't coming directly at my house, Okay, and they were off to, I believe it's Woodside Court is the one that's towards Garrison Road. I did not notice myself, but then they're further up the road, they're about halfway up the road. They're nowhere near the stop sign. These are going to be maybe 500 feet from the stop sign. So I don't think you're going to, I think you're going to see more traffic there with all the cars coming out.
I am a firm believer that not everybody travels at the same time, at the same
That I'm
time
sorry?
of day.
Pardon?
That people don't travel
Oh.
really at the same time, at the same time of day. So in my experience, I've never seen everybody coming out at one time to cause traffic jams or possibility of traffic violations. So I just would like to probably get some clarification with respect to a traffic study, if that's going to impact the neighbors and the residents, if that's.
I think that would be a good idea.
Yeah,
I think it'd be a good idea.
That might be a suggestion.
I'm not saying there's going to be a mass exodus coming out at 8 o'clock in the morning, but you have to admit 18 cars is going to be substantial. If there's 18 cars. I'm
Yeah.
assuming one for every apartment.
I don't know. It's hard to predict. I know that with all of the subdivisions that have been going in with, certainly massive amounts of home builds, that you don't see a lot of congestion because those homes have been built in the new subdivision, so they're not all coming in at once. It doesn't pose a problem. I don't think with all of the residences that are located in the Crescent Park area that you're experiencing that as well. And
At the stop sign there
You might
is.
have a good point that because there is an apartment complex being proposed there and possibly built, that it may have, if I'm not debating with you, just praying that there may be something there. I don't know, but a traffic study should certainly be
Okay.
able to address that. And just one more question. I don't think that you're opposed to having apartment buildings anywhere in the town of Fort Erie. It doesn't have to be specific to one geographical area. I think that where we can possibly find areas that can be built, that should be applauded, correct?
True, and there's a lot of other areas.
That's right. Thank you.
Okay. Can I say one more thing?
Of course.
Okay, thanks. Regional housing is now has an interest in that site?
Well, I don't know that. I've raised it with Niagara Regional Housing, and I'm going
Okay.
to ask them to take a look at the site.
So that's going to mean low income again.
Well, it's going to mean perhaps affordable housing.
Affordable housing or low income?
It depends on what they put in. If, first of all, the region has to agree to convey the property to regional housing.
Okay.
Regional housing would have to agree to put up a building of whatever nature. So the reality is that we have a need for affordable housing in Fort Erie. And for some people, affordable means a very expensive house, but for many people, affordable housing means something that is manageable with their limited budget.
I'm all for affordable housing for the working poor, the couple that are working, trying to make ends meet. I'm all for housing for those people. I just don't want Crescent Park to turn into another Esme Terrace that's out in Crystal Beach. That's my concern.
Yeah, that's co-op housing.
Okay.
Are there any other members of council that have any questions at this time? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Yes, please come forward. Good evening, and could we have your name and address for the record, please?
Gail Taylor at 756 Crescent Road. I've been at my location for 43 years, and it's been a pleasure. I've done a lot of improvements to my home over the years. I am going to reiterate what I said at the last meeting. I am not for apartment buildings. Yes, go ahead, build there, single dwellings, detached dwellings, even duplex is fine. But as I've mentioned even at the last meeting, Crescent Park is a community. We all have our housing there, and to start mixing up with apartment buildings, or now possibly an interest of regional housing, I'm not for that at all. I I know of other people, she's not here tonight. She's very upset with the same thing. She couldn't make it, who lives right next to the property. So I just wanted to reiterate again to have it on record.
Thank you very much, Ms. Taylor. Any members of council have any questions of Ms. Taylor? Thank you very much. For anyone else who wishes to speak in opposition to the application, yes, please come forward, sir.
I'm Larry Lamascolo. I live at 725 Crescent, right next door. I oppose the 18-unit deal. I've looked at a tower for a lot of years. It came down, it was an eyesore. Don't want to look at another eyesore. An 18-unit dwelling, not where residential homes are built, that are established for years and years. I don't think it's appropriate, and that's what I got to say.
Thank you very much. Any members of council have any questions of Ms. Gould? Thank you very much, sir. Anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this? If not, then
Mr. Mayor? Sorry.
please come forward.
So Reverend Bill Thomas, 4065 Village Creek Road in Stevensville. When you asked that question, did you mean speaking in opposition or anybody else who wants to address council?
No, I left it open, so if you
Okay.
want to address council, please do.
So I've been coming to council meetings for a few months now, and I was here when the housing report was delivered, and it's very noticeable in my work that there is a drastic need for housing in Fort Erie. And I understand. I've heard the comments that have been made, and I understand. But I'll tell you that I just moved into a subdivision in Stevensville, and if there's a lot like right around the corner from where my new house is, and if there was a proposal to actually establish some housing, much needed housing, on that lot, I would stand before this council and speak in favor of that. I don't think that an apartment building has to be an eyesore. I don't think that people coming in who are dependent on safe, affordable housing at an affordable rate are necessarily a threat to the community. I don't think that an additional 18 cars pulling out and using a stop sign, we're actually talking about extending another road so that it would actually mitigate that. So now we're talking maybe 9 cars, an additional 9 cars that are coming into that intersection. I don't think that is too high a cost to pay in order to start establishing a safe, affordable housing, and not only safe, affordable housing, but housing in general in this town. We need it. I work in the North End. There are lots there too, where they're talking about putting in some housing. I applaud that. I think that anything that this town can do to start to establish some infrastructure for people to be able to live here and then be able to work here. And so part of my history is that I've worked for a number of churches. 2 churches ago, we built a 97-unit apartment building on our back parking lot. We established it so that the facade actually matched the streetscape so beautifully that people were actually coming to us and looking and trying to figure out how we did it. I don't think that this has to be seen as a threat. And so I am going to speak in favor of this amendment that makes it possible that we might consider an apartment building on this property. Nothing is determined yet, and so I would actually stand and speak in favor. Sorry.
Before you go, any members of council have any questions of Reverend Thomas? Councillor McDermott.
Well, I'd like to thank you for your comments. For those of us who are working our tails off to try and find ways of bringing affordable housing to our community, it's very discouraging when we start out the conversation that we're not interested in it. I have three-story apartment buildings down on Butler Street. They're small. It's a nice brick building. And I don't have any problem having them in my ward. I don't. But we cannot isolate and put a stigma on people who are looking for housing, whether that be through some financial dilemmas that they have, or just the fact that the waiting lists are so long. There has got to be a time in this community that we finally wake up to this, because we do not want to turn this into a class problem. This is just a planning issue.
Excuse me,
And-
Councillor McDermott, this is an opportunity to question.
Is there a question?
So the question is, do you think that there should be more of this throughout our community? Just a general community?
So I guess my answer would be absolutely. But my further answer would be, so the housing complex that I just talked about that we built, out of the 93 units, 51 units were affordable housing, and the others were actually market. So that people heard that and went, well, why would I ever want to pay market in a building? Did someone down the hall is going to be paying $300 for the same basic unit? And people did. People actually chose to participate in that because they saw it as an opportunity to change the community. So I'm suggesting that we don't turn it into 18 affordable units. Have it mixed, because people will buy in. And when that happens, we will start to change not only the philosophy of what we do, but we will start to change people's hearts, and we will change the community. And that can happen in the north end, in the south end, in the west end, the east end. I don't care where it happens. I'm just saying it has to happen. And if every time it comes into my backyard, I say, well, I support it, but not there.
So, Mr. Thomas, we're dealing with 745
No,
Crescent Road.
yeah, so I'm,
I'd ask you to confine your comments to that. Councilor McDermott, do you have any further questions? No, thank you. Any other members of council? Thank you very much, sir.
thank you.
Is there anyone else that wishes? Yes, please come forward, sir.
My name is Hugh Simpson, and I've been living out in Crescent Park for 56 years.
What's your address, I'm sorry?
611 Crescent Road, north of the property, about a block and a half down. When I first moved out to Crescent Park, there was just cottages. The only paved road was Crescent Road, where I bought. And I've seen a lot of change, and a lot of changes were good, and a lot of changes weren't. And we talk about traffic. Let's talk about traffic. I've seen that out in Crescent Park where there's hardly any traffic. Now there's quite a bit of traffic. We're going to increase the traffic. Naturally, if there's houses built on the west side and the east side, back in the back there's always more traffic. And there's going to be more traffic. And it's going to get to the point where it's not going to be very convenient. And it's dangerous enough on Crescent Road. And it's actually a speedway now. It always has been. Back in the Fairview and Lakeshore or Lakeside and that, there were stone roads when I first went out there. No sidewalks, no sewers. And everything's going up. But the problem here is we have an empty lot. And if we take an empty lot in Crescent Park, which I have, maybe I might be able to do the same thing. But here we got an empty lot, and we're just going to change it into an 18 apartment building. Out in the middle of houses, two-story houses, mostly single-story houses. Where's conformity? A lot of times people say, well, we have to have conformity. We can't build this place over there because it doesn't fit the area. It doesn't go with the area that people bought. I know an individual been trying to get his place rezoned so that he could put buildings up, houses up, nice houses, not apartment buildings. He's been trying for 10 years. He wasn't able to do it. And he spent thousands of dollars. They had people in there going through his property, naming every tree, every flower, seeing there what kind of birds sitting in there and snakes and everything else. I don't see nothing happening there. And I won't mention, that's okay, but let me speak.
Yourself to 7:45 here, or Crescent.
Pardon me?
You confine your comments to 7:45 Crescent.
I'm going to. But what I'm trying to get here is that we got an empty piece of property. Why have zoning if we can just go in there and shove an 18 apartment building in the middle of Crescent Park? It doesn't even conform with anything. It's not suited there.
So the purpose of this application is to provide for a range of housing, single-family dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, duplexes, triplexes, fourplexes, possibility of a three-story apartment.
Well, then move the amendment to the motion, to the motion, and go back to where you started instead of going into an 18-story or 18-unit building. And I think that's more practical. I'm not even for that, but I'd be willing to sit and go on with that. But to put a three-story building there, 18 units in there, and somebody asks, well, there's a traffic increase, well, it's common sense. But that's all I have to say.
Thank you. Before you go, any members of council have any questions of Mr. Simpson? Thank you very much, sir.
Thanks.
Is there anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this application? If not, then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, subject to any concern that may arise out of any misprinting of the ad in the Fort Erie Post. Okay, so we're going to move to the second public meeting, and that is the proposed combined official plan amendment and zoning bylaw amendment with respect to a parcel of property on north of Royal York Road and south of Spartan Terrace. Mr. Vanderveen, you're going to be providing us with some background material. We'll use the same format. Anyone who wishes after Mr. Vanderveen has spoken can address council if they're in favor, and then they can address council if they're opposed. Mr. Vanderveen, I understand you're staying with the town of Fort Erie.
Yes.
That's good to know. Please proceed.
Control F. Yeah, thank you. So thank you, Your Worship. The purpose of this public meeting is to provide information on the proposal to initiate a combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment on some town-owned land located in the Rose Hill Estates rural residential subdivision. This proposal is in response to a request to purchase municipal property submitted from abutting landowners. The town-owned land that is the subject of this amendment is known as Block A on Plan 447 and is a piece of land originally intended for use as an open space area in the subdivision. The subject property and surrounding road allowances have been deemed surplus by town staff and the town's land committee. In order to consider sale of the subject property, the official plan land use designation must change from open space to rural residential, and the zoning from existing open space EOS zone to rural residential RR zone. Notification of the January 13th, 2020 public meeting was provided in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act by placing a notice in the December 19th, 2019 edition of the Fort Erie Post newspaper. In addition, all property owners within 120 meters were mailed a notice of complete application in public meeting on December 19th, 2019. Since this is a town-initiated amendment, notice was also posted to town facilities, provided to the BIAs, placed on the town hall electronic billboard, and posted on the town's social media platforms and website. This is an aerial photograph of the subject property as well as the surrounding neighborhood area. The subject property is known as Block A on Plan 447, otherwise known as the Rose Hill Estates subdivision. Rose Hill Estates is a rural residential subdivision that is located outside of the urban boundary and is west of Crescent Park. The following summarizes the land uses surrounding the subject property. To the north, vacant wooded rural residential land. To the south, vacant wooded rural residential land and single detached dwellings. To the east, single detached dwellings. And to the west, vacant wooded rural residential land and single detached dwellings. This slide shows the natural heritage features on and in the vicinity of the subject property as identified in the official plan. Schedule C of the official plan identifies 2 types of natural heritage features on the subject property: woodlands over 2 hectares and significant natural area. The natural heritage designation correlate with the environmental conservation land use designation of the subject property in Schedule A of the official plan. So these are the land use designations. The subject property is currently designated open space and environmental conservation in Schedule A of the official plan. Land designated as open space is intended for use for conservation, open space, and recreation. This application proposes to change the land use designation to rural residential to facilitate potential sale of the land through the land sale process. The environmental conservation designation will remain on the subject property. The subject property is currently zoned existing open space or EOS zone and environmental conservation EC overlay zone in accordance with the zoning bylaw. The proposed zoning bylaw amendment will change the zoning of the subject property to rural residential RR zone. The environmental conservation EC overlay zone will remain on the subject property. The presence of the environmental conservation EC overlay zone requires review of any development proposal by the town's environmental advisory committee. In 2019, EAC, as it is known, conducted an initial review of the site and recommended that an environmental impact study will be required prior to any attempts to develop the site. So this is looking at the subject lands north from Royal York Road. This was taken in spring of early last year. And this is looking northeast along Royal York Road towards the subject lands. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Van Der Veen. Any members of council have any questions? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop, to Mr. Van Der Veen. Does this, when you do this, does this create a dead end on one end of Princeton Road, or is it currently that open road allows?
Through the mayor to the councillor, that's a good point. Technically, yes, it would. We are unable at this time to close all of Princeton Avenue. If you take a look at the map there, the first lot along Princeton from Rose Hill Road has frontage onto Princeton Avenue, and the town is unable to sell the whole road allowance because it would effectively landlock that property. Whereas the other lots, if the land is ultimately sold, would gain frontage on Royal York Road.
So you don't see this, this isn't going to be a problem because there's really only one house that would still be accessed. So what's going to happen for where the house that's there now, the property ends, to where there's a lot between there, right? I'm looking on this other map correctly. So there's a lot between the first zero after the 524. That has no access currently, right? Like the road, Princeton Avenue, is it continuing past that lot?
Yep, it actually continues east and swings down right into Buffalo Road to the east. But even if we were to close, say, Spartan Terrace and the portion of Princeton that's proposed by this application, or the land sales application that's associated, I should say, that first lot will still have frontage onto Princeton Avenue. Even though it's untraveled, it will have frontage on a road allowance.
I can do, but it would be a dead end then.
Yeah.
Okay, and basically Spartan Terrace would disappear.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Any other members of council? Thank you very much, Mr. Van Der Veen. So I'll ask if there's anyone who wishes to speak in support of this application. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in opposition to the application? Please come forward, sir. And could we have your name and address, please?
Absolutely. Adam Tripp, 1645 Chatham Road. I'm speaking more on behalf of my father here because he's working at the moment, but he's more opposed to the idea of Princeton running through all the side streets there, Chatham being one of them because it would be right next to our house and disturb the peace, as it were. That's pretty much it, yeah.
If you could articulate what you just said. Currently, Princeton isn't open.
No. Yeah, he's opposed to the building of Princeton, not necessarily Spartan Terrace or anything connected to Royal York. It's just the road running through.
This particular application doesn't deal with Princeton Avenue except closing the portion of it adjacent to Spartan Terrace. So if your father wants to obstruct the opening of Princeton Avenue, this is a step in the right direction from his perspective.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that Princeton Avenue south of Royal York Road might at some point in the future be opened. But someone would have to pay for the cost of that, and they'd have to also get over any conservation concerns that might apply to this land.
Okay, well, I suppose it was more of an inquiry then.
Yeah, okay,
Okay.
that's fair enough.
That's it from me.
Thank you, Mr. Tripp.
Thank you.
Pass that on to your father.
I absolutely will, thank you.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this particular application? Yeah, please come forward, sir. Good evening.
Hi. My name is Brett Jarris. I'm here speaking really on behalf of my mother.
Sorry, your name and address?
Brett, B-R-E-T-T, Jarris, J-A-R-O-S, and my address is American. Do you want it?
Sure.
It's 5499 Stillwell, S-T-I-L-W-E-L-L Road in Hamburg, New York.
Go ahead.
We're the ones that filed the application. I filed it on behalf of my mother and Mr. Steve Stenson, who currently resides in Guam. My grandfather acquired the two easternmost lots. His grandfather acquired the next two lots to the left of that, to the west of that. When they bought them, they were told that Spartan Terrace would be developed. Unfortunately, it never was. So the land has kind of just been passed down, from person to person, and nobody's really sure what to do with it. So we were hoping that, with the purchase of the municipal land in front of it to the south and gain some road frontage, that the land could either be developed or sold off to a local resident to do with what they please, and obviously generate some income for the municipality too in the process. So that's really what we're looking for, what the application was for.
Right.
So.
Okay, I think that's clear from the report. Any members of the council have any questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Jarvis.
Thank you.
Anyone else who wishes to address council with respect to this application? There being none, then I'm going to declare this public meeting closed, and we're going to deal now with the consent agenda items. Does anyone wish any report removed from the consent agenda? IS 02-2020?
Yes.
It's on my list as well. Any other reports anyone wishes removed from the consent agenda? If not, can I have a mover for the remaining consent agenda items? So that would be CAO-01, CAO-02, and IS-01. Any questions or comments with respect to those reports or the recommendations contained in them? If not, can I have a vote? All those in favor? Opposed? Missed the question? Okay. So we're going to go to IS 02-2020. I need a mover for that. Councillor Butler. Councillor Noyes, I presume you have some questions?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Redekop. I had an opportunity to touch base briefly in regards to the proposal for the janitorial services. And my question was, did we in our RFP request that it be a living wage? Be part of the request for proposals. My understanding is that it was not a requirement. And I'm thinking that perhaps it should be. I mean, that's where it all starts, right? And janitorial services, I don't know what the hourly rate would be or wouldn't be, but we talk about the need for affordable housing. The first thing comes that people have a living wage to be able to afford the housing. So I understand from the CAO that it was not part of the tender, and so we really don't know if any of the people who are submitting the bids are paying a living wage or not. And some of the wages differ from, again, I don't have it in front of me, so don't quote me on the numbers, are significantly different by about 30 to 40%. I think one's about 990 and one is like 139,000. It's different. They're quite different. And I'm wondering whether because one is paying living wage and one isn't, or maybe one's making more money, and I don't know. But I think it should have, before I would support this, I would want to know, and I don't know how to go about it, but I would think that we need to request when we put out for tender that it reflect a living wage for their employees.
This tender's already been issued, and we're now being asked to accept one of the bidders. If a living wage wasn't part of that tender, then I believe that your alternatives, and I'll check to the CAO, we can find out by inquiring whether or not it was a living wage, in which case this report would be adjourned until next week. And if it wasn't part of the submission made by SQM and they don't pay a living wage, they simply pay the minimum wage or something less than the living wage, then I guess we'd have to decide what we do with this particular contract, because this service starts, I think, in February, does it not, Mr. Cookett?
That's correct.
So you've heard what I've said. Do you have any comments with respect to my comments and the question raised by Councillor Noyes?
Through you, Your Worship, to the Councillor. Councillor Noyes is correct. Our current RFP that we put out did not include for living wage in it. It's not addressed. It's something that we are looking at, as well as the procurement managers of all of Niagara Region is something we're looking at, and we think it should be in future RFPs, but this one did not address it. It is not included. So we're not sure of what they will be paying their staff as a minimum wage, and that could very well be the difference between the two, but it's not likely. I would think that the contractors that did provide prices are probably using minimum wage or thereabouts as their estimate for these submissions.
My understanding is that part of the difference would be that the low bidder is proposing to have the work done in 8 hours as opposed to 10. Is that correct, Mr. Walsh? At the town hall.
Based on Mr. Hutton's comments, that's correct.
Councillor Noyes, you still have the floor.
And I appreciate the comments. Again, that this is for a 3-year term, so if we don't request it now for a living wage, it may or may, if it isn't there now, it probably won't be for 3 years before we can even look at this again. So again, when I see the difference in the prices from $99,000 to $139,000, it may be a difference of 8 hours to 10. I don't know, but I don't know if that would account for about a 40% increase, and perhaps one is paying and one isn't. I'd just like more information. And if it comes to it, I would ask that our current provider see if they can extend it past February so that we have a chance to look at it.
Well, I think where we are is this. Unless we know for sure that living wage is not going to be paid, then I think that's some information that we need. Mr. Walsh, do you know one way or the other?
I'm running a side conversation with Mr. Hutton here. It's his understanding that the wage being paid is minimum wage. It's not a living.
Okay. So before I go to Councillor Butler, Councillor Noyes, I'm going to leave.
Well, hearing that, I would not be supporting this then, because I think we need to start somewhere, and this is a place to start.
Okay. So we'll come back to you perhaps. Councillor Butler.
Thank you, Your Worship. I agree that it's very important to have living wages. There's no way that they're paying living wages at even in their first year total, because if you take the living wage and you multiply that by 2 people, if you have 2 janitors, it's close to $80,000 with the burden factor built into it. So that leaves $19,000 for supplies and probably a small profit. So I'm assuming it is minimum wage as well. I'm just wondering, though, if we have the right to go back to an RFP, or since it's already been completed and they did this in good faith, are we mandated to approve this?
Who wants to answer that? Mr. Cookett?
I'll make an attempt to answer that. I don't think we are obligated to approve it, but in contract law, there's 2 contracts, as you would know, Your Worship. There's Contract A, which is the tendering for services, and Contract B is the award and carrying out of those services. I would think that we would put this on hold right now, reach out to the contractor, gather some additional information, and bring that information back to council, and then we can make a decision. But I do like the recommendation that we do ask the current provider if they would extend their services for another month until we sort this out.
Councillor Butler? Okay, so it seems to me that, this wasn't one of the alternatives. I think it may very well be in the RFP document. There's an indication that the lowest tender may not be accepted by council. That's not identified as an alternative, but I don't know. I think if we're going to put this over, and someone would need to move it to next Monday for further consideration, we should try to get some information about whether any of these bidders was offering a living wage. And if not, then we need some advice from you, Mr. Puckett, or perhaps from the lawyer, as to what steps we can take with respect to this, whether we would reject all of them, issue a new RFP, or what have you. Councillor Lubberts? Sorry.
Yes, thank you very much,
Excuse me
Mayor
for a second.
Redekop.
Excuse me for a second. Councillor Butler, do you, okay, just to follow up on that, and then I'll go to you, Councillor.
All right, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to follow up on that, my concern would then be that it would be unfair to take a look at the different players, because if it wasn't identified that we wanted living wages, it's an unfair advantage to other people. So that's something to take into consideration, I think.
Yeah, fair enough, and I think you're quite right. I guess in my exuberance to try to get to the bottom of this, I maybe wasn't thinking through all the possible areas. Councillor Lubberts?
Yes, thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. Just to follow up on what Councillor Butler was saying, that if we're going to ask the company that has won the award, basically, I think that if we're going to ask them to, if they're only giving minimum wage, and we're going to ask them to produce a living wage, we're going to expect that this is going to be more money as well. And I think Councillor Butler makes a point too. It's a disadvantage to the rest of them because they based it on their wages, and now everybody's going to have to base it on the same wage. So if it goes, they might have to go back. But again, we got to question the legalities. All these companies went through the tender process, which is the proper thing to do, and we didn't specify in the tender. And, they won the award, and now it's time to approve the award, and we have to look at, can we legally do this? And, I mean, we can reach out and ask, but I'm a little skeptical of going back on what we agreed to. We put out tenders, we should honor what we put out.
Anyone else? I'm going to go to Councillor Dubanow, who hasn't spoken yet.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just to echo on some of the points Councillor Lubberts and Councillor Noyes and also Councillor Butler brought up, I'm fully supportive of ensuring that everyone is paid a living wage and there's dignity in the work they do and that they're treated with respect and given the courtesy that their profession affords. My concern right now is that we already have policies in place with how we issued this RFP. And I'm concerned if we go trying to change things after the fact and say, well, you know what, sorry, we should have done this in the RFP or we should have done that, how it could make us as a municipality look and also potential legal ramifications. I think it might be better, and I completely agree with Councillor Noyes about the need for a living wage. I think it might be better to look at our procurement policies and how we go about that, and perhaps have a discussion, and I know staff hopefully are listening to me right now as I say this, and as we move forward, that this is incorporated as part of our policy for an RFP, rather than trying to change what's already been put in place after the fact. So I have no problem with, postponing this to get that information, but I think we need to think long and hard about where we go from there. Do we do it on an ad hoc basis, or do we do it corporate policy-wide? And I think doing it across the entire municipality as a policy is a much more productive discussion to have, in my opinion. So I just wanted to put that out there, and hopefully staff here, and that's a conversation we can have going forward.
Thank you. Anyone else who hasn't spoken before I go to Councillor Noyes again? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. And I understand that there's legal issues, and I was surprised when I found out that it wasn't a living wage, to be perfectly honest. I didn't do the math, because I can recall, several months ago that we actually had a discussion about living wage and the need for living wage and the need for us to be, I think it was discussed on the regional level too, that we supported. I think they had something coming down, and we supported their report about the need for living wages, and that we need to kind of be forefront on this and require that our providers provide living wage. So I was surprised that the answer was no, that it was not part of the RFP, even though it's not part of our procurement policy. And I agree with Councillor Dubanow, it probably should be, and maybe we need a motion to that extent to make it. But in regards to the legal issues, I don't know what the whole RFP says and what all the criteria is, and I'm not going to pretend that I do. However, I do know that in the ones that we have looked at over the years, we do base it on experience is one of the things that's not, it could be the lowest, it could be the person who has a higher bid but has more experience. So there is other things besides just the dollars and cents. So I don't know if we would be in any legal predicament if we look at the different wages and one of them does pay a living wage, that we would somehow be behind the 8 ball if we did that. Because to me, if someone is getting paid a better wage, they're going to hopefully take their job a little bit more seriously. Not that they don't take it seriously, but I think they will feel better about their job because the pressure, it relieves some of the financial pressure they have in other aspects of their lives. And I think we're going to land up with a better result and better care, because they're going to continue to work for that company who pays a better wage, as opposed to the rotating door and saying, okay, here's minimum wage. If I go there, I can get an extra $1. So I think if the people who provide our services are paid well, they're going to stay. And I think that also goes for our secondary services that we procure out. So I do think that we should wait for a week, maybe put this on hold and find out if any of those charges that we are looking at do provide a living wage. Maybe we'll be pleasantly surprised and there is one. And then if that is the case, then I would say, okay, you pay your laborers well, which means we're going to get a better result, less turnover. So I could definitely justify it, whether or not I asked for a living wage or not.
Anyone else? So what I think we should be doing is putting this over till next Monday to get some advice from our staff, particularly some legal advice, so that we don't get into a minefield. And then we'll have a bit more comfort as to what it is we can or should be doing with respect to this contract. So, Councillor Zanko, would you be willing to move that we put this over until next Monday till we get further information from our staff? That's moved by Councillor Zanko. The time is a week. There is no debate. All those in favor? That is unanimous. Okay, Mr. Cook, you have an understanding of what the questions and issues are that we would like looked into?
Absolutely, we'll look into it and get some legal advice. I just, there's some major ramifications in what is being suggested here, because it's going to affect every contract that we put out for tender, every RFP we put out for tender, and that is capital projects as well.
So we're going to focus, we're asking staff to focus on this particular report. At Monday's regular council meeting, I'm presuming that there's going to be a notice of motion put forward, and then council can discuss whether we want staff to provide us with some recommendations regarding living wage, what the implications might be, and what the potential financial implications might be. But that's not where we are. We're talking about this particular report. Okay. That completes our consent agenda, and that means we're going to Planning and Development Services, so I hand the chair to Councillor Noyes?
Yes. Thank you, Mayor Redekop. Planning and Development Services is now in session. That brings, we have no presentations or delegations from what I can see. That brings us to report number PDS 01-2020, proposed combined official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. It's moved by Councillor Dubanow. Any comments or questions on the report? Mayor Redekop?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions, one of which had to do with the point that's made in the report that because this is town-owned property, we're paying for the cost of the amendments to the official plan and the zoning. I presume we don't pay ourselves notionally with respect to those amendments, but I wonder what the situation is with respect to the regional official plan amendment. Do we have to actually pay for that?
Mr. Brady?
Through you to the mayor, through the MOU that we've had in the past with the regional municipality of Niagara, we don't charge them for applications. They don't charge us.
So this, Madam Chair, then is a situation where we're not incurring more expense than it's going to cost us to get rid of this property.
It does not sound like it.
That's, I wonder if the planner could give me a bit of a reassurance on that.
Mr. Brady? I thought he kind of
Through you to the mayor, I reassure you that we're not losing money on this.
Mission accomplished.
Just think about the taxes we will be collecting when a house
Yeah,
goes up.
thank you very much.
Okay, any further comments or questions? Seeing none, all those in favor of the report? The report carries. That brings us new business inquiries, new business and inquiries. Seeing none, that brings us to the business status report. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, Planning and Development Services is now closed. And I
Thank you
hand the
very
chair
much.
back.
Thank you very much, Councillor Noyes. That takes us to Infrastructure Services, and is that Councillor Zanko? It's Councillor Lubberts. Councillor
Yes,
Lubberts.
thank you very much, Mayor Redekop. I'll try to get through this as efficient as possible.
You gotta go
We
faster.
have no presentation or delegations. We have no reports. And that'll bring us to the business status report. Any comments?
New business or inquiries?
Well, new business and inquiries, I'm sorry.
So you have to
You
complete
see,
all four of
I
these.
got
You
the timings off already.
don't win if you cut any of them out. So
Yeah.
I'm going to slow you completely down because I wanted to ask the fire chief about some of the flooding that occurred in Fort Erie this past weekend. And he may not have any information relative to Dubanow, Mr. Walsh might, but I know that the chief definitely has some information relative to the flooding that took place down by Mather Arch.
Okay, Chief?
Through you, and I've brought some slides. At 5:30 yesterday morning, we received significant wind that once again raised the level of water in down at the Mather's Arch area. This is a picture of one of the vehicles that was trapped due to the level of the water. This is between the Mather Arch Loop and the Peace Bridge. This lady was had to be saved along with her dog. If we go to the video, if we could do that first before I show you what it means. This is a video of the water. This is at Mather's Arch at the loop on the other side of the Mather Arch sign, probably 20 feet into the lawn. This is pump 2 tied off. We have a rescuer. This is Captain Eli Babcock attempting to get to the pickup truck that's in front of him. And you can see how much water is there and the risk that they're taking to do that. So I applaud what they did and how they did it. This is the vehicle. This is on, like I said, it's about 20 feet on the lawn on the inside of Mather's Arch in front of the statue. So this is the actual rescue operation where we supplied, and you can see Mather's Arch behind with the statue in the background. But they're tied off, and then we are giving the occupants of the vehicle a life jacket and we're on a line to get them to our vehicle, and then we transported them to EMS, which was waiting on high ground. We can go to that picture now of the, if you would like. I think we get the gist. Unfortunately, the next picture, please. Unfortunately, our trucks, one truck in particular, pump 2, it sucked up some water, and that is a hole in the engine block. Again, we're going to have to find a way to come up with rescue techniques on land as a new reality. This is happening more and more, especially in the areas that we're typically seeing high water levels due to wind. We have talked to the Niagara Parks Police, and they're preemptively going to start closing the Niagara Parkway down by Mather's Arch as soon as we get environmental wind advisories. So that should help. But I implore the citizens of Fort Erie to stay away from these levels, because not only am I, you can see by the video, the risk that our firefighters are being placed at, we could have had them swept away, quite honestly, but you know, and although it's a big but, the cost that's going to be related to the vehicles, to repair the vehicles that aren't in service, that are, we won't be able to respond to emergency calls with those vehicles until they're repaired, and it could take months. We ask them to stay away from any high water when it comes to wind events. And that's all I have to say.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm just wondering, would you need a request from council to bring forward a report on some of the measures that might, that the fire department can use to mitigate these problems, or even upgrade some equipment? Is that what you're looking for?
No, I think that everyone agrees that no matter who I talk to, they all agree that this is the new norm. Our job is to get the message out to our citizens that when they're down, we're seeing a large uptick in surfers, individuals, adventurers, people that are videotaping. There's all kinds of YouTube hits showing individuals running around in their vehicles and videotaping these things. And I get the adrenaline part, but you can see the risk that's involved if those vehicles or those people get trapped. And quite honestly, we have 2 boats, and we're lucky enough by the grace of this council and the citizens to have very good equipment. But some of our equipment won't work in these type of atmospheres, and we just implore them to stay away from the water whenever they can.
Okay, thank you very much. Mr. Walsh, did you want to comment on that? The mayor indicated maybe you had something to do with Point Avenue.
Before we go to Mr. Walsh, can I just say that my understanding is, and the chief can confirm this, that the Niagara Parks Commission, he's had dialogue with the Niagara Parks Commission about taking more proactive steps in closing that section of the parkway when it appears that there are going to be high winds. As long as the lake level is as high as it is, the water on the weekend before the winds was about 3 feet from the top of the break wall, which means there's not a lot of movement that has to take place before it gets blown over, and you can see how much water. So I understand that the Parks Commission will be cooperating there, but then again, yeah, I'm interested in knowing how we made out in Point Avenue, if Mr. Walsh has any information on that.
Yeah, Mr. Walsh?
So the Point Avenue, as typically happens in these events, was underwater again. We closed the road. Other than debris on the road, there wasn't any further damage to the road, but the Halloween storm did a number on Point Avenue Road in particular, washed away about the half of the road. We also have an issue in Thunder Bay around Shirley Road, adjacent and across to from the regional pump station. That area there is within the floodplain, and Anytime the lake level rises, the creek rises in conjunction and washes onto Shirley Road. So we do have a meeting with the NPCA in a couple of weeks to discuss this issue. But as the chef says, it's the new norm.
Just one final question, if I might, Chair.
Go ahead.
Was there pumping that took place in the Point Abano area, both during the October 31st, November 1st storm and this storm this past weekend?
Mr. Walsh?
We, through you, Mr. Chair, we have our usual stormwater pump station in operation. It does have a temporary pump right now because the permanent pump, the gear that holds it in place is in disrepair. We've tried to fix it, and it's at a state where it can't be fixed. So the portable pump that is in place will be a permanent pump for the next year or two.
So has it been in use then over the past several weeks?
Yes, that pump runs 24/7, 365.
Okay, thank you very much.
And who else? Councillor Butler and then Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have a couple of questions, but I just wanted to follow up with the presentation that the chief did. Is there any way that the Niagara Parks Commission can contribute to equipment, since that seems to be a major portion of concern?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the councillor, Ed, that's a good point. We certainly could reach out to them. I have asked the chief of Niagara Parks for a meeting where we can discuss the future and what it may look like and how we may be able to help each other. So I think that's a good point, and noted. I'll make sure that that comes up.
Thank you. And then I have, through you, Mr. Chair, I have some residents on Kayart Road are concerned with respect to dead ash trees and the possibility of those ash trees falling on power lines. And since they're not on residential property, they're wondering whose responsibility is that?
Mr. Walsh?
We can look into that. That was Kayer Road? How do you spell that?
Yes, Kayart. Just off of Dominion, close to, in between Windmill and Stone Mill Road.
Yep, okay. We'll look into that.
Thank you. And then I have one other request. There is a group of concerned citizens in Fort Erie that are formulating their own environmental pack. And they were wondering if it's possible to get a report with respect to how many trees have been planted as a direct result of the removal of ash trees since the inception of that removal.
Do we have anything?
Just not a
Mr.
report,
Walsh?
I'm sorry, just an answer
An
to that
update, yeah.
inquiry.
Well, we have the number of trees we've planted. It's not as a direct result of the EAB issue. It's just the trees we've planted. That information in the latest tree report put forward.
Yeah, what do we reply? Are we just going to replace trees that we remove from town property? I think maybe what they're looking for is the overall residential, private residential, and town property. Is that what they're looking for?
For the councillor, I can get the number of trees that the town has planted, whether it's through development or other means, our tree giveaway. I can provide all that information for you.
All right, anything else? Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. I'm going to use the term replaced loosely, so just remember that. When they replace the hydro poles, they tend not to take away the hydro pole that's being replaced. It just stays there. And there's a number of poles, like they're side by side. You got the new one, you got the old one. And we're talking years. We're not talking a few months. We're talking years. I know it happened on our property. And I think after my husband called 2 or 3 years in a row, and then he kept calling, they finally removed the obsolete one. But I've noticed, and one of my residents was saying she just went around Stevensville and she found 29 poles that are replaced but not removed. And I know that when I think down Bertie Street, there's a few. I'm sure it's probably a problem all over Fort Erie. And I'm just wondering, what is the process or what is the expectation for Hydro when they replace the pole to actually remove the redundant one?
Mr. Walsh?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We did have this conversation with CNP this spring, actually. Their operations group was in to talk about a number of issues. They would like to get the poles in and out as soon as possible. They are relying on other utilities to transfer their plant to the new pole off the old pole, and until that's done, they can't take it out. We can bring it to their attention, but until Bell and Cogeco and NRBN and whoever else is on that pole transfers the wires to the new pole, there's nothing CNP can do. The CNP did say they don't like the issue either, and they want to do it as fast as possible.
Councillor Noyes?
Well, I appreciate that explanation, but I will tell you, some of these replaced poles have nothing on them. There's no wires from anybody or anywhere. There's nothing on it. It is a pole with nothing. So I don't know when CNP is telling you that. I know the pole in front of our house had nothing on it. Like, everybody removed their services for about 2 to 3 years. There was nothing for anybody to remove except the pole. So I'm not sure. I haven't looked at every single pole, but I know a number of them that I've seen have nothing on them. There's nothing to remove because nothing's attached to it. I'm being redundant, I know. I'm trying to prove a point.
Mr. Walsh, can we somehow maybe keep our eye open if we see an empty pole?
Excuse me, point of order, since I'm familiar with this. This was a topic that we raised with Don Gilbert from Canadian Niagara Power. He came out and addressed us. Also, I think, introduced the manager of customer engagement. But this is something that I would ask the CAO to follow up on with Mr. Gilbert, or if he's already gone, whoever his replacement is, because this is an issue. It has been going on for a number of years. Some of the poles do have existing wires on them. Some of the poles are actually Bell Canada poles, but there are still many Canadian Niagara Power poles. So maybe we could just refer this to CAO.
Yes, Mr. Cookett.
Through you, Chair, to the councillors. Absolutely. One of the things that CMP did state to us, they were changing their regulations with dealing with these other utilities and giving them a short period of time to do their transfers. So that's just point one. The other is that they said that they would start to tackle the removal of these. So I definitely would be happy to give them a call and say we've got many poles that have been sitting for many years that are now can be removed. So, you know, if council knows of some locations, please provide those to me, because then I can be specific in my conversation with them, but I definitely will follow up.
And Mr. Cookett, do you have a schedule with CNP, or you're going to have to make a schedule?
I will make a schedule if you provide me with the information where these locations are. But I will have those conversations. But tell them that they need to address these in a much quicker fashion. This doesn't follow under our franchise agreement where we have to provide approval for the installation of new poles. So it's unless someone tells us about it, we're not aware of it.
So you can contact CNP, let them know that it was brought up tonight, and then in the future we can bring him a list of locations?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Noyes?
This may be an opportunity too, since we have a communication strategy and things in place, to actually encourage the residents. Like, I mean, I don't have the time to drive around looking at every pole, but I know my husband was pretty peeved. And I would imagine that other residents are also, if they have one, we ask them to let us know, that, you know, to check the pole out to make sure there's nothing on it or whatever, that we would probably have, they would probably be a very good resource. So I would say somehow communicate it to the public. to let us know if a pole needs to be removed.
Yeah, we could do that somehow. Mr. Cookett?
Through you, Chair to the Councillor. Yes, we can. I would suggest you allow me to have the conversation with Mr. Gilbert or his replacement, and then maybe they can set something on their website where you just go in and you log the location, and then we'll make sure that they're following up with these removals.
Yeah, maybe we could have something like, same thing as we spot a street light that's out, we make a report. We could do the same thing. Anything else, Councillor Noyes? Mayor Redekop, did you just want to
That was it.
tap in? Anybody else on new business inquiries? Seeing none, we'll move to business status report. Any comments or questions? Seeing none, infrastructure services is now in recess. I'll turn the chair back over to Mayor Redekop.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lubberts. That then takes us to Corporate and Community Services, Councillor Dubanow.
Yes, thank you, Worship. Corporate and Community Services is now open. We have no presentations or delegations. We have some reports. First report on the agenda, CAO-03-2020, establishing an industrial land development reserve.
So moved. No, we don't have a mover yet.
Moved by Mayor Redekop, and that report is on the floor. Any questions or comments from members of council? Okay, I'll go to, I saw Councillor Lubberts first, so I'll go to him, and then Councillor Noyes, and then the mayor.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Yeah, I don't see a problem with having some kind of resources to establish some kind of inventory of industrial land. But when I read through the report and I see that we're talking about rezoning and then maybe getting involved with some kind of private-public partnership, those kinds of things, and if we're going to develop some kind of a strategy or a policy for purchasing and creating shovel-ready land, I think it would be in our best interest if we just stuck with purchasing some land, right, and rezoning on our own, and because we're going to be, unless the developer or the property owner wants to rezone it themselves, but I think before we do anything, I'd like a little bit more clarification on how staff would go about, especially with private-public partnerships. Because if we get involved in that, I don't know that this is the time to do it, because we would be almost fettering another council that they would have to enter into some kind of agreement. So how would staff even go about doing that on a private-public partnership?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Lubberts. I'm wondering if Mr. Cookett might like to comment on that.
Through you, Chair to the Councillor. It was never my thought to do a partnership with a public. This money is being set aside in a reserve to address servicing needs or land acquisition, or to help with industrial development. We all know that there's a lack of industrial lands in our municipality. We can take a bunch approach. We can look at purchasing some property and eventually servicing that. I'm not a big fan of servicing land that does not belong to us, because it's out of our control if that property owner will actually sell once we service it. So I don't know if that's a road we want to go down. But until we establish this reserve and get some money set aside, we really aren't doing anything, and we can't do anything because we just don't have the money. So I think this is phase one. Before we do anything moving forward, we would bring that before council for a decision. So if we had a property that we thought that we should purchase, because there may be inquiries, then we would definitely bring that before you for a decision.
Thank you, Mr. Cookett. Councillor Lubberts, did you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just as long as we understand that we're not going to be servicing any private properties. And in the report, I was also talking about the report that we got a few weeks back from Ms. Campbell's consulting company. And they talked about that, you know, we're kind of stuck with what we got, and we got a lot of conservation area, got a lot of wetlands, we got a lot of overlays. And are we going to maintain their protection, or are we talking about rezoning some of that property as well? Because that interferes a lot with what their industrial strategy was with other reports.
I'll pass that on to Mr. Cookett just to comment on that. I don't believe that was the intent, though, if I'm correct.
That is not the intent, and I don't know if Mr. Brady would like to weigh in as well.
The report that was referred to by Councillor Lubberts identified some areas where there are opportunities to remove some overlays based on the work that was done by Lisa Campbell's firm for the municipality. And we were directed at that time to move ahead with that, and we will be bringing official plan amendments and zoning bylaw amendments to remove those overlays in the areas that no longer warrant the protection.
And if I may just ask a follow-up to that, I'm not sure procedurally if I can, but we were also adding overlays to properties as part of that report as well that had been identified as part of the assessment that was done. Is that correct, Mr. Brady?
That's correct.
Thank you.
So,
Councillor Lubberts?
So anything we do here is going to be reflective of that report, adding and taking away.
That's my understanding.
Only it won't be anything other than what was recommended through Ms. Campbell's report.
That's my understanding. I see Mr. Brady nodding his head, and
Okay.
I think I see Mr. Cookett nodding his head as well.
Okay.
If I could just add, sorry. Chair.
Absolutely.
We will look at properties that were not considered as part of this report. The report looked at certain industrial areas, which is identified in the map that's part of this report. And there was property in Stevensville. But if there was some property outside what came forward in Lisa's report, then we would consider that as well. We'd have to look at the zoning and any heritage features that are on that property.
Yeah, no, what I'm trying to get at is anything that was mentioned in her report will follow her report. Anything outside her report, and then it's outside her report.
That is correct, sorry.
Okay, all right, just, okay, thank you very much.
All right. I'll move on to Councillor Noyes now.
Thank you, Councillor Dubanow. This is I think it's on topic, but it's a little off-center of the topic. I'm just wondering if when we're looking at industrial lands, and I'm definitely in support that we need it, we would love to have more industry coming here. If we've ever approached the existing industries, which perhaps have downsized over the years, like they had 5 acres when they started and they're only using 2 acres now, have we approached them in regards to perhaps severing the 3 acres that they're no longer using, and perhaps give them incentives in regards to if they sever it, we waive some fees or something like that, which will then make, they're still using the 2 acres that they're using, but the 3 acres that they're not using, which is already serviced, which is already zoned, but we're just encouraging them to sever it. It's a win-win. We don't get the property, so to speak. We're not selling the property, but I think it's a win-win for everyone. And I don't know if that approach has ever been taken.
Thank you, Councillor Noyes. That's actually a really good question that I'd be interested to hear the answer to. Mr. Cookett?
Through your chair to the councillor, it's my understanding that has not been done to date. With the EDTS moving in-house, and Ms. Grumman is actually here in attendance and listening, and I know she wants to meet with all business owners moving forward, big and small, to see how the town can help. And this will be part of our approach. If they have additional lands that they don't feel they need or will need in the future, then we'll help them market those lands and try to sell those to the appropriate developer. This is part of the approach, as well as we currently have some industrial lands that are fully serviced that are not being used, and other than for some storage. So we would like to start discussions with them, because if their immediate plan is not to build on that, or any plan to build on that, then we would like to either have that praised and purchase it, or market that on their behalf. So that's the approach that we're taking.
Councillor Noyes?
I appreciate that explanation, and I do hope that part of that is doing it again. It's not me. That we do look at incentives, like helping them, like waiving some of the fees for the severance and things like that, and helping them through the process, because, I mean, you know, there's a reason that they perhaps downsize, and having an opportunity of making money somewhere else, I think would be good. So hopefully that'll be part of the discussion. Thank you.
Did you get that, Mr. Cookett?
I sure did.
Awesome. Thank you. All right, and now I'll move on to His Worship.
Thank you. I just wanted to say that we've talked now for, I don't know, a couple of decades about servicing industrial land. That all starts with having money, and so this is our commitment to actually putting money into that endeavor. And I think all of the other strategies that have been mentioned are good. They should be followed up. The notion of expanding the urban boundary, acquiring land, takes money, and this is what we're doing. The other, and so I want to thank council if we pass this, for taking that step, and staff for making these recommendations. The other thing I wanted to comment on, when we're talking about servicing, aside from water, sewer, storm sewer, hydro, and gas, let's not forget fiber, because we need to make sure that that's part, particularly for industry.
That's an excellent point, Your Worship. All right, any other members of council have questions, comments? All right, I don't see any, so I'll call the question. Oh, Councillor Lubberts?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Just to follow up with the mayor, if we're accepting this report, should we not make an amendment to add fiber? Or is this just, let's see, is this just for information?
I mean, you certainly can. I just to comment quickly about the current policies of the telecommunications providers. They don't lay copper anymore. So if they're putting in telephone lines or they're putting in cable lines, it's all fiber optic to begin with. Costs them less money, and more importantly, uses a lot less electricity to operate. So I mean, certainly if you want to move that, that's fine. We can do that. But I'm confident that any infrastructure that would be laid would be fiber optic from the get-go.
Yeah, no, I'm just wondering if it's necessary, just to make sure that we got it covered.
You can move it if you want. I personally don't feel it's necessary, but if you want to move that.
We don't need it. Anybody else? No, all right, forget it.
Okay. All right, so if that's settled, I'll call the question. All those in favor? And I see none opposed, so that carries. And so that now moves us on to the next report. And with His Worship's permission, I'd like to move hand the chair over to Councillor McDermott, because I'd like to speak to this.
Okay, so we're dealing with 59-67 COS 101-2020, council meeting schedule for 2020. Can we get a mover? Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I want to express my appreciation to the clerk for putting together this report. I thought it was actually quite thorough, contained timelines and some suggestions. I thought it was good. We've had a lot of discussions about this during our corporate and community services business subcommittee meetings. And I know this has come up in the past, and we've had some discussions about, you know, what's the right number of meetings? How often do we need to be here? And I've already mentioned in the past, you know, the ease to contact members of council. I mean, some of us are on social media. You know, we all have telephones. I mean, I'm not going to go over that again. But during one of the committee meetings, I'd actually inquired about how does it work with staff? We have more meetings, staff stay here later. Are they given, you know, time off? Are they paid overtime? And Mr. Cookett, the CAO, had mentioned to me that they're actually provided flex time. So my concern is the more time we have staff here at meetings means that they're away from their desk at town hall to be able to actually provide services to residents of Fort Erie, whether it's a building permit or questions about infrastructure or someone even going to pay a tax bill. When they're here, it means they're not there. But then Mr. Cookett mentioned something that I thought was very, very interesting. And he said that the staff are so dedicated that they don't take their flex time, that they come in the next morning and they come into work for a full day, even if they have to stay for a meeting. And I think that just goes to show how great our staff we have here and how dedicated they are. My concern is if they're doing that, then the work-life balance gets thrown out of whack. They're staying till a meeting, 8 o'clock. Some of them have to travel. And then, we certainly, tonight we had one staff member leaving for the private sector. We've had other staff members leave. Members of the community have expressed to me that we seem almost like an incubator before someone moves on to something else. Whether that's true or not, I don't know, but that sentiment has been expressed to me. So I'm going to be supporting this for the reasons that I mentioned last time it came up, and also because I believe it's better for staff, better for council. I think it's better all around. And if someone really truly needs to get a hold of us, I mentioned my phone number last time. I'm on Facebook and Twitter too. So there's lots of ways that we can get a hold of and that constituents can convey their concerns. It doesn't necessarily have to be at this venue. So I appreciate the work the clerk did putting this together, and I will be supporting it.
Councillor Noyes?
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. I'm not going to be supporting it the way it's written, but I do like, we have this little paper in front of us, and I think it's from the mayor, that I do appreciate his input for that. And although hearing Councillor Dubanow, I don't think having 4 additional meetings, and I think that's what it works out to be, if we follow Mayor Redekop's suggestion to amend Appendix 1, that April, May, October, and November have an additional meeting. I don't think having 4 additional meetings is going to create any change in family structure or any big effect on staffing's quality of life or anything else. But I will say that if we have fewer meetings and the meetings are no longer 2 or 3 hours, they're 4 or 5 hours, that's probably also going to have a very negative effect on families, and then they may be taking more flex time because they're exhausted the next day. I know that when we have meetings here that end at 12, and I get 5 to 6 hours of sleep, I'm sure I'm not working as well as I could have been if I had 8 hours, if that ever. I wake up at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning, so it's rare for me anyway, but more information than you need. So I'm going to be, and I know the amendment is not on the floor yet, but I'm not going to support it as is, because I do know that there are meetings that we have stayed here for extensive lengths of time, and I think many of the times it's because we have 1 or 2 public meetings which extend the time significantly because the public have a right to come. And I'm also thinking, okay, if we have fewer meetings, that means the public, that when we do have a public meeting, there may be more than 1 or 2, or perhaps 3 public meetings for that meeting, because there's not another one happening for another month, so to speak. Because I think we have them in the council and committee. So then you're going to have these individuals attending the meeting, and some sitting there for 2 hours hearing the pros and cons of something they're not involved with and waiting for their public meeting to come. At least now that when we have 2 council and committee meetings in the month, where we usually have the public meetings, we can separate them. We can have one on first committee, council and committee, and the second on the second council and committee. We don't have to push them all into one meeting, which will, I think, extend the length of the meetings considerably. So I'm not in favor of the way it's written, but I would support the amendment as the mayor has put forth when it's put on the floor.
Yeah, I think what I'd like to do, I've heard what Councillor Dubanow has to say, and I don't disagree with the importance of work-life balance and the importance of not burning out staff members. I would like to move an amendment, though, that Appendix 1 be modified so that there be 2 committee meetings in the months of April, May, October, and November, and 1 regular council meeting, and that instead of 1 meeting in December in Appendix 1, that there be 2 meetings. So the 7th and the 14th, I think, right now it provides for 1, but if there were 3 meetings in November, by definition, there should be 2 in December. So essentially, it's 8 months where there are 2 meetings per month, 1 council meeting, 1 regular council meeting, and the 4 months where it appears the most activity takes place would have 2 council and committee meetings, 1 regular council meeting. Just want to speak, so I'm making that amendment, and I just want to give some rationale as to the broader view taken of this, and I've spent a lot of time thinking about this, and originally was quite opposed to any change, and I think I expressed that even to Councillor Dubanow presence. I happened to be on council when we did 4 meetings every month throughout the year, including the summer. I think Councillor Barry and I were opposed to a reduction in June, July, and August. Turns out that that worked out well. I wasn't supportive necessarily of the change that we made last year, but I think it's worked out relatively well, except, well, I think it's worked out relatively well, except we've had some really long meetings in April, May, October, November in 2019. If I thought that the agenda that we have set and the work that we're anticipating trying to accomplish as a council and the work that we've placed on staff could be accomplished with fewer meetings across the board, I may support that, but I don't think that's going to happen. I think that and staff is telling us that there's no indication that the development and construction in this municipality is going to decrease. In fact, I think Mr. Brady told me that because of the weather that we've already had a dozen building permits applied in 20. So that we're going to, in all likelihood, have a continuation of those types of things. I can't imagine that we're going to sit if we were to eliminate the 2 meetings in April, May, or the extra meeting in April, May, October, November, we would have, as I've indicated in here, meetings that would average 4 hours to 5 hours plus. I don't care who you are. You get up at any time early in the day, and if you have another job and you come here and you sit until 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, it does have an impact on your ability to make decisions. And we owe to the residents and we owe to the people that are doing business with us an obligation to make good decisions, ask the questions that are necessary and make good decisions. And so I'm thinking that it's a little too much for those 2 months where most of the activity happens to expect us to get through our business. It could very well be that we would have agendas that would be very manageable. But if we had 1 meeting in April in 2019, we'd have had 14 committee reports to deal with. If we had 1 meeting in May of 2019, we'd have 22 reports to deal with in 1 meeting. October would have been 18, and for November 21. That is far too much work. We've had agendas in 2019 where there were over 500 pages to read. I do that for a living. Some of you also read a lot. But for those who don't, as a matter of course, read that amount of material for a meeting, that's just overburdensome. And I understand the concern about staff, and certainly they are fundamental part of the operation here. Whatever we decide, if we don't have good staff willing and able to implement the policy decisions that we make, we don't succeed as a municipality. I'm familiar with the role that we as councillors play, and I know that all of you do a lot of work outside of this room. This has been a very good council. The previous council was very good council in terms of being responsive to our residents. And so I would think that that's going to continue, but that doesn't substitute the opportunity for people to come here and address us, whether it's a formal public meeting, whether it's a delegation that they have with respect to an issue that very much concerns them. This is their forum. This is their opportunity to speak to us as a group. And we are going to be reducing it again as we did last year, but I think that what I'm proposing is a fair balance and does provide the public access to us and provides us the ability to make good, sound decisions, having had an opportunity to consider them and not be making decisions at the last hour where we're tired and we just want to go home. That doesn't serve us, doesn't serve our staff, and doesn't serve the public. The one other comment that I wanted to make was that with respect to meetings, yes, if we have a meeting that goes to the curfew and we decide not to extend, we can have another meeting. That's happened a couple of times. If we have reports that need to be dealt with and they didn't make it to the committee, yes, we can put it on the regular council agenda. The problem with that is I firmly believe that we should not be passing recommendations in a report and then passing a bylaw the same night, which would mean we would have to call a special meeting the next week. And I would much prefer to know what my schedule is in advance rather than having to shuffle my schedule because we've called a special meeting. Those are the reasons that I think that, you know, we can go to 2 meetings per month for all of the months with the exception of April, May, October, November. And so that's why I've moved the amendment to Appendix 1 to accommodate that and to provide for 2 meetings in December.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott, and I do appreciate the mayor's comments, and I get it. I mean, I certainly don't like being here, you know, any longer than is necessary, especially when we have multiple public meetings on contentious issues. We had, I know the night that we had the discussion about opting in, opting out, and other things that came up that evening. That was a very long evening that we had, and it was certainly memorable. But just from looking at the report here, and you know, certainly I get that we've had some long meetings this term, but when I look back to 2018, I look at September, for example, when there were 4 meetings, and I see that they had an hour and 15-minute meeting, a 1-hour meeting, a 2-hour meeting, and a half-an-hour meeting. And then just recently, this past September, we had a 2-hour, 15-minute meeting, a half-an-hour meeting. We had one that was a little longer, an hour and 50 minutes. So the length of the meetings hasn't substantially changed. And I'm thinking if we did go about the recommendation of the clerk, the only way that we would know if we would actually have an increase in meeting length is if we tried. We reduced from 4 to 3, and I mean that example there's not really any significant substantial difference except, you know, I see an hour and 15 minutes and an hour and 50 minutes, but then there's an hour and a 2-hour and a 30, and we have that here as well. So I don't think, just based on looking at this here and the excellent chart that the clerk put together in this report, just looking at that, it's difficult for me to grasp the idea that we're automatically going to double the amount of time that we're here, because that's just not borne out by what the report says. I do appreciate the mayor's comments with regard to accessibility. You know, whether we do that over 1 meeting or whether it's 2, is there anything so time critical? I don't know. Staff made this recommendation, and so I have to think that they would have taken that into account when they recommended the schedule. I get where the mayor's coming from. I get where Councillor Noyes is coming from. But when I look at the numbers here and when I look at the recommendations and when I consider the balance of everything else, you know, I can't support it. I'd like to give staff's recommendation a try. They worked very hard on this report. We had discussions about it during corporate and community services. I want to see what happens. And perhaps, you know, when 2021 rolls around, if we have a whole bunch of 5-hour meetings, we can address it then. But this is an excellent report, and I'd like to give it a try.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I don't know that I'm going to support the amendment. I don't know that I would even support the recommendation on number 1. I know what I signed up for. And when I look at what we're trying to accomplish, well, I don't know what we're trying to accomplish here. When I look at the report and I think back on when we discussed this last year, it was the same thing. What is going to be the end result that's going to make everything more efficient? I don't know what it is that we're looking for by changing our schedule. What is it that we're going to get? We're going to get shorter meetings? No, you're not going to get shorter meetings. The meeting is going to go as long as it has to go. And we're going to have to cover the agenda accordingly. And I signed up for this in 2010. I knew what I signed up for. I think it's fine the way we're going about it. And I think we just leave things the way they are. The way we changed it last year, maybe that helped a little. We cut back on, 6 meetings, or something like that for the whole year. So, but I don't think we need to change. I think we should be here as often as we can. As a matter of fact, that's the way I feel, right? But unless somebody can show me where the benefit is going to be to make these changes, and unless somebody wants to explain to me what they're actually trying to accomplish by making these changes, then fine. But if we're just doing it for the sake of not being here every week, then I'm not going to support any of it. I'd rather stay the way we are.
Thank you, Councillor Lubberts. Councillor Butler?
So I don't agree with Councillor Lubberts at all. I don't think that anybody's trying to shirk their responsibility here or anything. Everybody knows what they signed up on. Coming to these meetings are to have formal approval on items that staff are working on. The bulk of our work gets done outside of the council chambers, and we work very closely with the directors and their staff in order to accomplish the feats that we do to help our residents out. That's the main thrust of our job. Then our secondary job is to come here and to make sure that we're making right decisions to be fair for both opposing and those sides that are either for or against, and making sure that we deliberate and make the decision that's proper and fair for the community as a whole. Having said that, I know that sometimes, and my question is, information can be time sensitive or critical. Is that going to become problematic if we just go to the 2 meetings per month? And how would that be handled? Because I think there's a fair compromise here that the mayor has put forward, and I just want to know the answer to that particular question, Mr. Chair.
So your concern is moving the business forward with the reduced schedule that we currently have, and if there's issues in particular when it comes to passing bylaws, I think that's your question. And you know, if we have reports that go forward, currently we have reports go forward on council and committee evenings, and it's not uncommon now, and we've told staff it's okay to bring forward a report on a council night. If you were to have a report that went forward and it came forward on a council and committee night, and you decided to delay that and bring it forward on a council night, now you're passing the report and the bylaw the same night. I believe, though, and the clerk can step in here, there is a time period where we have to wait regardless of 20 days to pass bylaws. And I think the thought is, well, you're passing the report and the bylaw the same night, and we don't want that. Well, we can't do that. I believe there's restrictions on this time period. We must wait the 20 days. I don't know if the clerk wants to add to that as well.
Yes, if I can just clarify on that. The situation where we have to wait for the 20 days for bylaws is if we have a public meeting with a recommendation report the same evening, which happens occasionally but not very often. In that case, under the official plan, you do need to wait 20 days before you can pass the bylaw. So we've had that happen. Otherwise, if we were to have a public meeting and if we had a recommendation report on the regular council meeting, if it was very important or imminent, then we could have a special council meeting to deal with that. That's always available.
Mr. Chair, just one further question to that then. Noting that planning and development is busy, is that going to slow up any, processes for development?
All I can say is that this year, there hasn't been any holdups in development as a result of the schedule that we have. I think the mayor's correct in that the 4 months that he's identified are the ones where you have the majority of the reports. It all depends upon the willingness of council to have reports to them on council evenings.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do agree with Councillor Dubanow and the mayor. I think I will be supporting the amendment simply because I know myself, I do work as well, and special meetings aren't as easy for me. I usually coordinate my work schedule, which allows me to be at council meetings. So I do like how the mayor has identified the months that we have long meetings and potential for, if we were to go with this new schedule, to have those special meetings. But, I don't think that there's anything to stop us from revisiting this next year. And if this amendment is efficient, why don't we look at it? We've made the change last year. We see that was successful. My thoughts are as I'd like to support the amendment to kind of do the same rather than struggle with those months of 5-hour meetings and possible special meetings.
Okay, are we ready to vote on the amendment? All in favor of the amendment? Opposed? Carried. So now we'll vote on the motion as amended.
There's further debate.
No?
Yeah, just one quick comment about the idea of trying new things. My understanding was the entire reason that we originally went this way was that the original discussion was 2 meetings, possibly 3. So we tried 3 meetings, and staff have come back and they've made a recommendation saying that perhaps, with the issues that I brought up with the time staff are at meetings and away from their desks or working many, many hours, that they should try 2. And we're not doing that, which was my understanding is that we would try 3, and then, if that works, then we would go to 2. And it seems like we're just incrementally winding it down rather than getting to the actual goal that we desired. So, council's going to decide however they want. If this is a decision that they've gone with tonight, that's fine. I'm just expressing my frustration that we have this in front of us. We have a recommendation. We went to 3 meetings last year as a pilot project, and we still can't get to what the original request was to begin with. So I'll vote in favor of it, but I'm not happy with this amendment at all. I think we should have just gone right to 2, tried that, and see how it worked.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I just can I get from the clerk exactly where we're at now? So from what I can see, we're going to go to Appendix 1, which is 2 meetings a month, except for April, May, October, November, and December. Is that right?
Through your chair to Councillor Lubberts, yes, it's 2 meetings a month, save and except April, May, October, November. We'll have 2 committee meetings, 1 regular meeting, similar to the schedule we currently had for 2019, and then 2 meetings in December on December 7th and the 14th, a committee meeting and a regular meeting.
Okay, all right, thanks.
So I happen to agree with Councillor Dubanow and his thought process, because I'm the one that brought up this motion of change a year ago or a year or 2 ago anyway, and the thought process was to go to 3 meetings and to try that out, and if that worked and we saw the capability of going to 2 meetings, that would be a great way to go as well. But having been the one that raised it those many years ago, I think that this is a fair compromise to lead into, I know, kind of pull off the Band-Aid and run with it, but I think this is a fair compromise to kind of weigh it, because the anticipation of the level of development that's going to come in the next year, I think it's important to weigh that out at this point. So anyway, if I'm proven wrong, then we go to the 2 the following year, and no harm, no foul, I think.
Thank you, Councillor McDermott. Again, I'm in support of the amended motion. And just hearing Councillor Dubanow, I do understand his position, but I'm looking at these hours that the mayor collected for us, that in one committee meeting, it was 5.25 hours, which means we were here till 11:30, 11:25. Can you imagine how long we would have been if that was the only committee meeting that month? Because then that would have had all the, although it is combined, okay. Well, that still would be way too long till 11:30. Again, I think that the numbers speak for themselves, that after so many hours, you stop thinking, and you should probably stop voting too.
Ready to vote on this as amended? All in favor? Opposed, if any? Carried. I hand the chair back to you, Councillor Dubanow.
Thank you very much, Councillor McDermott. And just got to go back to the agenda here because I had the report open. Bear with me, guys. Yeah, I see that here. Yeah, so we're through with reports. So we're going to go to new business or inquiries. Any members of council? All right, I don't see any hands, so that's good. That takes us to business status reports. Likewise, seeing no hands up, so that's good as well. So I will hand the chair back to His Worship.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dubanow. That takes us to scheduling of meetings. Any forthcoming meetings this week? Councillor Noyes.
Thank you, Mayor Redekop. There is a 40 not-for-profit housing meeting this Wednesday at 9 a.m. at the King Street apartment buildings in the common room.
Anyone else? Just looking here. Councillor Butler and I have a meeting with the Communities in Bloom Committee on Thursday. I believe that's at 10 a.m. Aware of that? You were supposed to be checked with. If not, and there's a land committee meeting at 9 a.m. on Thursday. I think that's it. So I'll accept a motion to adjourn. Councillor Dubanow. All those in favor? None opposed? That is carried.